And we're recording.
Okay. Now everybody has been on the Facebook thing, and there was tons and tons of things about why you make excuses, why you can't go in the business. You could sell bees if you got 2 or 3 nukes, 2 or 3 hives. I mean, don't let things bother you. You don't have to be big. If you're not splitting hives and growing, then your hives are dying. So you need to be treating them. I'm going to let a lot of people, because we got in a late start, I'm going to let a lot of people do a lot of questions. I've seen people posting they don't know the difference between nukes, what they're used for, queen castles, and regular hives. Basically, I'll give you a quick rundown. Queen castles are basically used for if you don't want to cut queen cells. Let's say you have plastic foundation you can't cut. Queen castles work good for that. I seen a picture of mini frames turned 4 different ways. Mini frames as a queen castle will not work. You would be constantly charging that box. 2 frame boxes, they will work, but you got to stay on top of them. The 5 frame box is your best bet. The standard 5 frame mini nuke, those have to be charged on a regular basis with new bees and nurse bees. So a lot of people don't understand that. You can't have 2 hives and then decide to set up a bunch of mini nukes, because you just won't have the volume of bees. If you're going to do mini nukes, you need to set up some 8 frame double deeps that you can shake nurse bees out every 2 to 3 days, because once the nurse bees get to a certain age, you're not going to draw queen cells. So being that said, let's get into the questions. I know we got a late start, so everybody's got a whole list. I see them holding their lists up there. Who's first? Remember, hands up so we know who's wanting to talk. If we don't get you unmuted, you might have to unmute yourself.
Dale's up first here. Go ahead, Dale.
Hey, Don, how you doing?
Hey, okay.
You know, I heard you say before, I believe, not to start splitting until after Easter.
Well, you run the risk if you split before Easter, but that would depend on where you live. I would say if you're Tennessee and north, I'm northeast of Atlanta, 55, 60 miles. And if you get a cold freeze, you're going to lose your splits. So keep that in mind, that when you make splits early, you're running that risk.
All right, let's say the weather's nice, you're checking your hives in March, and you got queen cells.
If you got queen cells, I'd move your queen cells and shake some bees in, and then keep them closed up with a screen for a few days. Make sure you got more than enough bees in there to keep that queen cell warm.
Okay, will do. Thank you, Don.
Okay, if you got a frame that you can cut the queen cells out, then separate them.
Okay, I got some in there like that, and I got plastic in some. Yeah. What I did was take my just regular 8 frame box, and I built me some 3/4 inch follower board that goes all the way to the bottom of the bottom box.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I can separate it 2 or 3 times, whatever.
Well, you'll have to have an entrance for each section.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Appreciate it, Don.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Pat. Trying to unmute you. There we go.
Hi,
Go
guys.
ahead, Pat.
Finally, we're here. Yay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was wanting to know if Don could talk a little bit more. You talk about charging them and adding to them. Can you talk a little bit about why you're adding to them? Because there's a little bit of a timing issue that I think people are missing a little bit, could affect the success rate of their trying their queen cells, starting with, queen castles or whichever way they're going to do it.
Well, if you have a queen castle and you stick a whole frame in there, it's got multiple cells in there. What you want to do is find a frame that you see bees are actually hatching out in front of you. Or another thing is you can look at the frame. Most of your nurse bees are going to be a gray, dusty look. I would shake an extra frame in there. And if you're not used to what you're doing, shake extra in there just as the insurance policy. I use minimal amounts myself, but if you got a box you've set up as a queen starter, you need to add fresh bees to it every 3 to 5 days. If you don't, after your second graft or your third graft, you're not even going to get much of a cake. So the more you feed them and put new nurse bees in there, you have better success. And there's nothing worse than grafting and spending all that time putting them in and then feeding them, and then you find out they're duds. And most of the time it's because they either got chilled or you didn't have any nurse bees in there.
Okay.
Did that cover it?
Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Chris. Go ahead, Chris. Can't unmute you.
There we go.
There you go.
How y'all doing?
Okay.
Good.
Hey, Don, I was gonna just bring up a point. You always talk about people's equipment to keep it standard, and I just wanted to tell, like, because you were talking about the new beekeepers, to make your 5-frame nuke standard.
Right.
Have a bottom board, a nuke box, and that way when you grow, you can add another nuke, another box on top of it, and just keep on going.
Right.
The real popular thing is like the coats, little simple nuke. You can make them real quick, and they're not standard. They're just for what they are, and they're nice. You can put a little hole in it, and they're good. But then once the bees, really start taking off, and there's too many bees, you only got a little hole. You
Right.
can't have a double stack or a triple stack hive with just a little, 3/4 inch hole. And so just by having that bottom board and then stacking boxes and keeping everything standard, that's the way to go. And if you can start off standard and just move, keep going, everything will be good. It's easy to make the little coats method. You can make like 4 nukes out of a sheet of plywood, and you're like, that's good. I'm only going to need it for that. But guess what? The bees get packed in there, and then you need to add a box. You can't add a box because they don't fit on top of each other. And then the entrance is too small.
Well, we do, on the 5-frame nukes, we do basically a solid bottom, which we nail a piece of plywood on the bottom, or we shoot brads on it. And we run regular 5-frame bottom boards, which are, you've got the 3/4 raise from the bottom up to your first box. That is what you're basically talking about. Those are good for people making splits and have a full-time job, because if you don't have time to work your bees, you can throw a medium super on it, or you can throw a deep on it. And then when you have time, you have 5 frames there. You can pull 2 or 3 out and make 2 or 3 more splits. But now the solid bottom, we use those with 1 1/8 hole in there with a screen on it. And we use that simply to take 50 or 100 boxes to an out yard. We make our splits up there, put the screen on them, bring them back here. It's best for, for transporting, space-wise, time-wise, a lot of good things about it. The disadvantage of it is if you're using a vaporizer that you have to slide in, you can't vaporize them. If you've got a ProVap, you can put it in that hole. But, everything is going to have good and bad about it. I see lots of people using 2-frame nukes. A lot of times people build a lot of equipment up and they don't realize something happens down the road, they become allergic, bankrupt, or whatever. It's hard to sell odd stuff. Let's keep it standard. What we do on our 5-frame is we put a slot right down the middle, and we convert them to 2-frame nukes. And it's got a political sign which goes down the center. And when we get ready, we can pull that out and convert it right back to a 5-frame. You could basically do the same principle on a 10-frame. We basically don't run 10-frame. We run 5s and 8s. That's what we basically run. You can make all the splits out there. One way, there's a lot of little things that we do that are probably more advanced. We'll take a 3-pound package and we'll put it in a 5-frame box with a divider in there. We'll put a queen cell on each side, 1 frame of honey and a frame of just new foundation, and we'll dump a 3-pound package on it and just take our hive to them, move them back and forth, let them migrate down, and put the feeder on them. I mean, there's a lot of ways in this business to skin the cat, so you have to figure out what works for you. That's just one way we do, Basically, using 1 box and getting double the use out of it is what we're doing.
Yes, sir.
I hope that
That's
helps.
it, Don.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Don.
Get those hands up now.
Yeah, no one's got their hands up. If you've got a question.
Well, I'll make a comment. I hear so many people, and I see them posting that everybody says don't take honey out of your hive the first year. I have a preacher in the next town, 8 miles from here, and he'll tell you, and I'm sure he ain't gonna lie to you, he's bought packages from me, and in that first year, springtime, he averaged 3 to 6 gallons of honey per hive. He split them same packages 5 or 6 times the same year. So the thing you want to think about, bees do 2 things: multiply and make honey. If they're not doing that, you're not treating. And if you're not treating, you're kidding yourself. If you ain't treating them bees, you could have no mites at all, no hive beetles. And if you got a beekeeper within 1 mile to 3 miles or someone driving down the road, you'll get a mite bomb overnight. They'll just almost take over on that. And if you're not on top of it, you're losing hives. So, you know, I put stuff out there, and a lot of times people ain't catching all the little details. Anybody else got a question now?
Yeah, Virgil's up next. I can't unmute you though. There we go. Go ahead, Virgil.
Hey, Don, just wanted to find out, we've heard quite a few people talking about flipping the boxes in the spring because most of the bees are up in the top right now.
Mm-hmm.
What advantage is that? I mean, I guess, or when do we do it even? Do we just, as soon as
right now, you're February. If you got good working weather and it's, you know, about 50, 55 degrees, then you can do it. I don't just flip the box myself. I set another box in its place and I go through the hive frame by frame. And if I got brood in the second box, I put it to the bottom. And if I got frames that need replacing, that's the time I do it. So I'm basically doing a reverse and maintenance at the same time. So, you know, when you're going through there, just don't grab frames and throw them back and doing this and that. I've had people come here that they ask me where the arrows are on the frames and the numbers. I don't believe in that system. It's just like I've had people come here and make foundation and go to put it in a frame and hold it up and look which way the Y's pointing. I said, I've done hundreds of pounds of waxing the foundation and not one bee has complained yet. They work it. They'll change it and do what they want with it.
So if we get into we're kind of afraid yet because we were, 30 below last week with the wind chill, and then we were up to almost 60 and now we're back down to 9. So I'm sure it's going to, yeah. But when we do, then if we get into those boxes and there really isn't anything in those bottoms, like you're saying, we can put another box in there and start going through that top box, even if it's reduced down then to one single box for a while. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, right now would be a better time to get them reduced. If it's just plain honey up there, you know, get all your brood and put it back down. And in that situation, I would try to keep the brood together. Don't put an empty frame or a blank frame between brood, not this time of the year.
Okay. Well, we got the pollen feeder, the dry pollen feeders ready to go. And is there any kind of minerals or anything we should add to that? We did, I think you said the flippin' bee. We got the flour and the cornmeal and the dry milk, but should we add any dry minerals or anything to it?
I've tried several of the different ones you can build yourself at home. I think in the long run, you're basically cheaper just to buy a bag of Mega Bee.
Okay.
I put a lot of things up for people that want to go the cheap way, but Mega Bee was designed by, you know, the USDA to where bees could basically be put on an island, and if you fed them that supplement there, they could live. They got all the trace minerals, all the stuff that they need to survive. The salts, you know, whatever, you know, the pollen.
Right. Yeah, well, I keep a salt block out there, and you see them. Sometimes they're with it, and then other times they don't touch it.
Right.
But
they'll get on it sometimes, you know. But I would have the pollen substitute away from them. I wouldn't put it on top. If you're going to go with patties, my experience on patties is if you buy the pre-made ones, which are about 8 ounce or 1 pound, I would cut them up in 8s. So you want them to, you know, consume it real fast.
Yeah, we made the PVC feeders that we're going to hang in the tree, like you said. We'll hang them out away from the bees, but
Right.
try and see if that'll help them build up quicker, because they seem to always get such a late start here with the weather as crazy it is.
You might have an early start this year. The weather's crazy, you know. We got stuff blooming way ahead.
Well, it's starting to bud. We seen today they were starting to tap trees already, so that's a little bit ahead.
Right.
But I'm afraid of the cold. We did lose 2. Like you said, I kept splitting, so we had 13 to start. We lost 2 that just starved out. We had the candy boards on them too, but the weather was so crazy. I think that warm weather got them moving too much, and they just went through it.
They'll surprise you, you know. It's just like down here, you know, you get a week and a half of hot weather, they'll go through a lot of feed fast.
Yeah, I see that. It was the smaller nuke boxes, and I guess I just didn't expect them to eat it all that quick, but they did, and we'll learn.
It's trial and error, you know. There's no beekeeper I know of out there that can tell you that they don't lose no bees. If they tell you that they're a master beekeeper, they don't lose bees, and they've been doing it a long time, they either don't have bees or are lying to you, because I lose bees too. I make mistakes. I'm human. Sometimes
that's all we got right now.
Good split, and you walk away. You know, things happen.
We'll learn, hopefully.
Okay, next up is Pat. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Pat.
for Virgil, I wanted to tell you something about when people talk about flipping the boxes in early spring. The one thing that you have to be really careful of is if you're real early, sometimes you'll get a little bit of brood in the top of your bottom box and a little bit of brood in the box on top of it, so that they're in between like that. And at night, the bees will cover that brood between the 2 boxes. Well, if you don't do an inspection, you just go out and flip your boxes, because you hear everybody saying, flip your boxes. So you'll put that brood up on top and this brood down on the bottom, and the bees can't cover it. So you'll lose all this brood. So that's why you really need to be careful that you do look to see where the brood is, like Don said, and keep it together. Don't separate it. I put it into the center with food on either side of it. In early spring, it's real touchy. If you do it too quick, you can lose your brood and your bees too. But that's what you're looking for when you're going in there, is where that brood is between those 2 boxes. I moved several bottom boxes the other day because they were completely empty. The bees had moved up. There was no food or anything. And so I just took those away. And then some of my hives, they were so full I had to add a box. Each hive is different, so you have to look at it. You can't just assume that because one is okay, then just flip them all down the row. You got to go in each one. That's all.
Okay, next is Dale. Go ahead, Dale.
So I'm sorry, I didn't have anything.
Oh, your hand's up here. Sorry. Any other questions? There's no hands up.
Oh, come on, people. As soon as you turn the recording off, everybody's going to start talking.
Here's Greg.
We're here to benefit other beekeepers too. I mean, I'm here to learn too.
Greg, go ahead.
A bunch of us are, starting down this road and trying to turn beekeeping into more of a profitable enterprise while also doing right by the bees. And so a lot of us have full-time jobs, and we're transitioning or finding ways to make enough time to put that effort into the enterprise of beekeeping. And I know most folks know you've been keeping bees full-time for almost ever, as long as some of us are old. What was it like? Were you always a full-time beekeeper, or what was your transition like if you did go from a career and the different field into commercial beekeeping?
Well, you need to get, first of all, you need to get with some good bee clubs and start local and get your name recognized out there local. Have a job until you get up to about 150, 200 hives. I think that's the point right there where you can start making money. And don't be afraid to charge. I've been doing this a long time. I see a lot of people, first thing they do is they want to get out there and sell bees, and they think by undercutting prices that they're going to go and make money. They won't. They're actually hurting themselves. You have a good product, you don't have to cut it. you know, you might want to just do honey. I mean, you can make some money with honey, but if you want to do it full time, to make money in honey, you need a minimum of 500 hives, and you need good locations, and you need to be raising your own queens. Once you get into where you're making money with honey, it's just it's a big old stone going downhill. Your boxes you got is not enough. Your extractor isn't enough. You don't have enough hours to pull the honey and to move bees. So do what you can do yourself. And if you have one or two helpers, I mean, that's a plus. But learn to save where you can. Don't get a big expenditure and go out there and expect you're going to recoup and expect losses. I mean, every beekeeper all over the United States, everywhere, you're going to lose bees. So don't put your last paycheck into bees and expect you're going to double your money or triple your money. There's no reason you can't make money in beekeeping. You have to find your niche. Some people's niche is just taking bees around pollinating. You know, the downsides of that is, you know, you're away from your family a lot. You're on the road a lot. You get a lot of sleepless nights. Then you got to buy bigger equipment to move the bees. So, you know, every little facet of it. Selling beeswax. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do in beekeeping, but I've had students from one end of the country and the other, and they said just being one of the keepers, getting on my page, is put them in the door 5 years ahead of what everybody else is. So, you know, you can start out on your own, advertise, and put ads in every book you can see and hope for the best. But I started out in bee clubs and get your name out there.
Would you have was there a single event that sticks out in your memory that was maybe when you did transition from doing something else to full-time beekeeping? Was there like a single thing that helped put you over the edge back then?
Well, the thing is, if you sell 2 or 3 big lots of bees, I mean, that is the rewarding part. And that's, you know, that puts a smile on your face to say, yeah, that's what I want to do. But if you're selling 1 nuke here, 2 nukes there, 5 queens, I mean, you can't see that the future's there. But when you see a bunch of people in one day as buying your product, yeah, you can, you know, it's a life-changing thing. The main thing is don't give up, you know.
Okay, Steve's got a question down here in the chat window. He's asking, when you were cutting corn syrup, are you adding by weight for water to get it to 1 to 1 or 2 to 1? Well,
what we're doing is we're buying, it's already a pre-mix, or it's a consistent, we buy it at. And 1 tote, we take 2 totes of water to it. And by the time you drive around, it sloshes around and it gets pretty well mixed. But it comes out pretty well, you know, thick. I mean, it's really thick when it comes out. It's hard on a transfer pump to pump it. I'll put it that way. It's a little bit thinner than Carol syrup coming out of a small pint bottle, if you know, seen that. But I think by putting more sugar or less water to it and more sugar or corn syrup, you're going to get more reaction, you know, better, build up faster.
Okay. Next up is Pat.
Oh, it's me again. So I guess what people are wanting to know is, Don, did you have like a retirement income and you went into bees, or did you just start off from the beginning that you were going to make your income from bees? And does it come all at once a year? Can you reliably say that every quarter you're going to have this much money? Or how do you determine how you're making income from your bees and when it comes?
Well, I'll put it this way. I've been basically self-employed most of my life. I've never had a paid vacation. So, you know, that's the downside of it. But, you know, like right now, there's a lot of beekeepers sitting in their living room. They're saying, oh, it's wonderful now. I'm working now. I mean, I have to build stuff up constantly. I'm working for spring. And by the time spring gets here, I'm already working into summer.
Right.
But I pretty much sell my nukes and my bees. I sell packages to the end of August. I sell nukes to the 30th of November. I sell queens to the 30th of November. So we try to graft out, you know, anywhere from 100 to 300 every 3 days on grafts. But this year we're going to increase to about 500 to 800 per week because we're running extra yards and a granddaughter coming in. So, you know, we're going to run a bunch there too. But, you know, I mean, you can make it. There's people can go into this the first year. If you belong to 1 or 2 clubs and on Facebook, the things are more available today than there was 30 years ago.
Right.
When I started talking in 1990, 91, I was talking about small cell bees. And people says, it don't work. It's no good, this and that. You know, for 3 years, I said, the heck with it. You know, if they don't want to do it, don't do it. So you're not just being a pioneer. You got to educate the people around you. And if they don't want to be educated, don't let them get you discouraged.
Right, right. So you sell queens, you sell packages, you sell nukes, you teach classes. So you don't have all your eggs in one basket. You do everything to generate income all year long.
Right. And, you know, I have done pollinating and I'm cutting back on the pollinating. It's nice to have 100 to 200 hives just on pollinating. And, you know, like if I'm moving bees, I try to get $75 per hive. Now, if it's a nice, sweet location, there's, you know, chemical free, they're organic farms. If it's a nice location, you make them decent amount of honey, I might just tell the guy $150 or $125, I'll leave them there year round. But you have to talk to the person or the landowner, find out what their intentions is. They might say, I'm not going to use pesticide, but they go with the fungicide and then there goes bees.
Right.
I
mean, I think that's an important thing for people to know is that it's not just the pesticide that you have to watch out for because it goes into the entire hive. You have to think about the fungicides, the weed killers. So it's a lot, you know, and just because the guy goes, yeah, I don't use anything, he does. He just won't tell you. So you really have to make sure you know where you're putting your bees. You're going to lose them. There's
not the money that people say there is in pollinating. I mean, let's be real. And you know, whether you buy bees from me or you get mad and say, I ain't buying nothing from you, I'm going to tell you the way it is. I mean, you're not going to make a lot of money in pollinating unless you're big time with several hundred or 1,000 hives. And you're going to have 2 to 3 trucks and help because you're constantly, see, that's one reason people think you're only selling bees in the springtime. Where do you think a lot of pollinators are getting nukes at to replace their bed outs? They're stopping by, they're picking them up, and they're overwintering in Florida. So, you know, they're not telling you how much they're losing. I talked to a fella 3 weeks ago. You need to get on the list to take bees to California. I said, what are you paying? Oh, we're paying $225. I said, I make $175 4 times a month out of that same box. And I don't
you don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I'm not in that business anymore, but yeah, you could do it if you do it on a small scale.
So if you had some contracts with pollination, that would give you some guaranteed income. And then you have your honey sales that'll be going on all year long. I bank my honey, so I'm always bottling honey. And a lot of people get excited and they'll give it away and they'll sell it really cheap. And then a couple of months, they're out of honey. I still have honey for sale when everybody else around me is sold out. And so that's a market that you can sell to and advertise to. So you have to figure out what you can do to spread it out all year.
Yeah, the thing about the selling of the honey, though, you've got the cost of the jars, you got your time.
Right.
It's like I've talked to students that's been here, you know, and they ask me why I'm not selling honey. And, you know, people think I'm crazy. But if I told you, and you drive up my driveway and you see hundreds of these hives everywhere, you don't have no honey? And I explain to them, if I sold you a quart of honey for $50, would you pay me? And they look at me like, no, I don't think I would. I said, but let's say you did. The first thing you want to do is tell me about granddaddy's bees, your bees died, everything else. So put a price on your time. You're there 30 minutes for what? $50 even. But we sell our honey for $25 a quart. And I try to let my son do that because I can make more money teaching in the bee yard than selling honey.
Right.
And I don't want to sit at a farmer's market. I mean, it's good when you first start because you have a lot of time. That's the thing you have to do.
And you get your name out there.
Right. You have to manage your time.
Yeah. So when you're first starting out, you got to advertise, and you're your best advertiser to begin with. because you've got to talk about that product and why are yours different from everybody else's? Why is your honey different? Whatever your thing is, you got to learn how to talk about that and sell it to begin with. And after I went the first year, I went to farmers markets and craft fairs and anything anybody would let me. I had a demonstration hive and I would go and set up a table. But if you've got a good product, you only have to do that 1 year. That's your establishing your name out there in the public. You know, go to bee clubs and talk about what you got.
Well, see, that's the main thing on bees. I go to bee clubs and people are advertising that they sell bees. I don't even do that. I sit there and I'm only going to answer someone if they ask me directly, do you sell bees or do you have nukes?
Mm-hmm.
Then I would answer. I'm not going there, sit there and right away walk in and say, I sell bees, I do this.
Right.
So
right.
The market's there if you want to develop it.
Yeah.
You have a good product, you shouldn't have to, say much about it.
Right, exactly. The first year you will, because people don't know it until you start talking about it. But after you get your name out there, it should sell itself. I have last year's customers bringing this year's customers to me. They'll call somebody and say, well, so-and-so got bees last year. And so that's where your best sales are, is word of mouth. It spreads it for you.
I've been fortunate as far as advertising. I've only advertised, I think, 1 ad or 2 ads back in 70. There's just, I don't, and then bee magazines, I've had the Bee Journal, Gleanings in Bee Culture, the American Bee Journal, they'll call me up once in a while, why don't you put an ad in? Why do you want to advertise? To me, I can't take care of the customers I have now. So why would you?
Well, you have an established customer base, though. You've been there long enough that everybody knows that bee man. That's why we're all here on your chat tonight. But
that's the thing about students. I send them business, and all the students that I've had, I'd rather sell their bees than mine.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point for coming down and taking your commercial class and becoming a student. It gives you that opportunity.
Even that there, every student that's been here, that's been coming a long ways, I'll tell them, watch the videos. You can learn enough off them videos. You don't need to come down and waste your time, but they still come down.
Well, because it's you and you're fun to talk to. But the first video I ever saw was the one where you took the strip of eggs and mashed it with your thumb. And that's how I learned how to make queens, because I could not see eggs. I couldn't see the eggs to reliably make, with the little scooper thing and all that. And so the videos work. Everything that I've seen on your videos is accurate, and it works.
That there video was done because there was 2 older men come here, and I was teaching someone how to graft, and they walked back to my bee lab and watched us for a while, and they said, well, that's fine because you're young. I said, no, I got macular degeneration, I got floaters, I've got cataracts. I said, but how many queens do you want to make? So I did that video to show them, and they said, well, they were a little doubtful, but they come back about 2 weeks later and they said, you know what? More than half of the queens came out. And it was amazed that nobody had ever mentioned that to them.
Yeah. And if you take a frame and put a couple of bars across it and do the way that you show in that video, you can make enough queens every day that you don't have to graft, because I don't have the vision to graft, but I make queens.
Well, see, you're a testimony in yourself there. You say you tried it, it works. Everything that I put out there, I'm not charging it for it, but people get tired of hearing the same old thing. That's why I try not to do so many videos. I would rather sit here and talk to people, and save them.
I think you learn more with the conversation part of it.
Okay, we've got to move on to some questions here.
Yep, sorry, I thought sorry.
He's going to mute
talk
us.
all night.
Virgil, go ahead.
Yeah, Don, you were talking about making money, and obviously we don't have enough to even think about starting to sell yet. But a neighbor approached us yesterday about an ad he saw about sponsor a hive, where a lot of the people up in the city that want to help save the bees can't do it, and they're getting $150 sponsorship for 1 pound of honey. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, if you look on YouTube, I know there's a lot of videos, but I've done a video on that exact thing probably 6 years ago. I called it Adopt a Hive. And what people would do would buy or adopt a hive. They'd give $150. They could come out twice a year and get a quart of honey. And I would stencil their name on the hive.
Yeah, that's what I just said to Verge today. If we do it, we'll just get something where we can put their name on that hive and we could take pictures or whatever they want and send it through the week. And then, like you said, then when we harvest honey,
Well, I'll tell you one thing better on that. Mentorship and maintenance of hives. I've got 3 students in Texas, and I've got one in North Georgia, and he builds the hives. He paints pretty little logos and stuff on it. He takes 2 hives to the property, whoever wants it, and he charges them $1,000 a year to maintain them. He goes there twice a month, checks them. If they need splits, he keeps the splits. He gives them 2 to 3 quarts of honey per hive.
So you don't think it's outrageous that it's something that I know we could do if we tried.
If you're working with your hands, you can make money. My son asked me 3 years ago, he was building hives for people, and there was a lady that wanted him to paint them. And he called me up and asked me, how much should I charge? I said, if someone's that lazy, charge them $10 a hive. And he did. So there's people that don't want to do nothing, but they want to be a beekeeper or they want bees. We got people that have bees on top of buildings downtown Atlanta, and they have people that take care of them for them.
It seems crazy that somebody would do it the way we think, because it's just we're used to doing, I guess.
Well, older people used to work, and the younger generations got educated thumbs.
Well, I guess we're going to have to give it a shot and see where it takes us. I mean, at least nothing else that'll help us build ours up.
Right. Who else got some questions now? We got people here.
Next up is Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis.
Hey, Don.
Hey.
You're using corn syrup now.
Right.
How long does it take to spoil? Does it last a lot longer than the sugar water?
Well, I've got some sitting on a trailer now. There's probably a half a tote that's not cut. My son's got some on his truck, and it was cut back in November. It's still fine.
I'm just thinking about getting
oils too.
You're doing what?
We're putting essence of oils in ours.
Okay. I was just curious because I want to, the way this thing's going, I maybe need to try to find a way to store some in order to have it on hand all the time if I get all these hives going. So
well, now Man Lake will deliver it, or if, where you're at, I would check around. There's several commercial people over there that probably buy it in bulk. You can probably buy a tote. If you got a way to haul it, go there and let them fill it and get the straight stuff.
I think Dedant is within about an hour or so of me. I might be able to get over there. I think they sell some, but
yeah,
that's 55. Is that?
Yeah,
55?
That's batch 55. They used to call it. I don't know what they've called it now. But now, if you get a hold of my son, I'm not promoting the man, but he will deliver a minimum of 3 totes. And the totes, if you buy singly, I think they're around 1,600, 1,700, which would break down when you cut it with water. It breaks down to, I think, 12 cents, 13 cents per pound wise. Now, he got 4 totes delivered. The more you buy, the cheaper it is. And when we buy the last one, I think it was $1,300, $1,400 a tote. So, I mean, that's something to think about. Personally, I think I would just look around for some plastic totes. A lot of places will give them away, or you can pick them up cheap and call Man Lake. If you got enough money and you got enough hives, buy their minimum. It's 3,000 pounds or 3,000 gallons, I think. No, 3,000 pounds, I think it is.
We're not there yet, but
next year,
it won't be long.
It'll bloom.
I had one of your hives, your queen. Someone said the northern queen won't work. I went out there in the wind. We had a high wind and an ice storm. Took the lid off of one of the full-size 10 frames, knocked the nuke over. It killed the nuke. But I figured, well, that was your queen. And they looked like it's all dead on top. I just aggravated all get out. I just threw the lid on it. They got up to 60 the next day. They was pulling out the dead bees. They're doing fine. Had a nice 4 inches of snow on top of the frames. I guess it kept them warm. So a southern queen of yours can make it up here.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that they have that idea, but most bees, I guess, came from the South, and, They acclimated to wherever we sell a lot to New York, all the way up the East Coast, and we've got them clear over into the West Coast. I've got several people buy a bunch of them in Washington, Oregon.
Well, so far, haven't lost a hive yet, exception the one that the wind blew a double 5 nuke over and just soaked them. And
I don't know if it's anything that I'm doing other than the only thing I know that maybe some people don't do. I buy good genetics, you know, from several different people and then mix it. I can't say my bees is any better than anybody else's, but you know, you're saying they are. I mean, I'm not going to sit and brag about my queens. I sell enough of them right now.
Well, I bought a lot of queens from down south and various places, and I got some coming up from the north, just trying them out.
Yeah.
And I've had my own for years, but I'll primarily kind of stay with yours because I like that no veil working. That's better than what I had.
Well,
they holler about they won't make it up here in the north, but I'm telling you, I've never had any problem. I haven't lost one of the queens yet. They're doing real good. So.
Well, I've had people say, you know, that the bees, the meaner they are, the more honey, and I've never seen that to be true at all. I found that, you know, the bees get too mean, you work them a lot less, and you're going to have swarms. So,
well, I was inbreeding them, trying. Well, I end up with I'd say about 90% African blood in them. So I got them from Texas, and then I got busy for a few years, and I want to see which one would live. Didn't mess with them. This year, the last of them mean hives will be split up in one single frame and requeened with cells. That'll be the end of them. But,
you hope.
Well, let's hope.
Yeah.
You're right. Let's hope. But
yeah,
all that stock will be gone. There'll be drones in the area. I'm sure I'll have to weed through, but it's nice not to have to worry about all this veils and stuff. So I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Chris. Go ahead.
We'll get good testimonies tonight.
Dennis already got my question. I was just going to say about as far as using the corn syrup, everything seems to be just as good as the sugar. You don't notice any difference on buildup or anything?
Have I noticed anything?
Yes, sir.
Well, when I used it in South Georgia, I didn't think I had as good a mating, and the bees didn't seem to do as good. But you know, that's back in 70s and 80s there, so everything's changed. They might have made a better syrup. The thing that you have to worry about now is the genetically altered corn that they make the syrup from. So that's the main thing that I worry about. But so far, so good, you know.
Because it's a lot easier to mix up something that's already a syrup and thin it down to what you want than to go from solid and trying to make it a liquid.
It's not a solid. It comes out. I mean, it's like
pretty thick though.
It's thicker than like maple syrup that you buy, Mrs. Buttersworth or something like that. I mean, it's thicker.
Okay.
Well, I'll put it this way. We dropped a toad out there and it went everywhere. And that stuff floated on the ground 2 or 2.5 inches thick. And it didn't even want to soak in the ground for 4 days, 5 days.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about that. And then I was thinking too that it's, you know, it's for somebody with more bees that they're going to have bigger equipment to pick up the tote and everything.
Yeah, that's
still debating whether.
The bigger you get, you're constantly upgrading on equipment. I mean, I got a 20 frame extractor and I barely used it last year. You know, I personally like using a frame of honey to make a split. Going back there, if I got students that want to know how to do honey, then I show them, you know, one time on the extractor, I say, there's the boxes, extract then. When they get tired, they just close it up. It's just a lot of work to me.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. But, you know, sugar, you know, you have to go with whatever you can get a good price on. If you get to one of the distributors or the wholesale place and get number 2 sugar, you can buy it fairly cheap.
Okay. Yeah, I was told, too, to check with, like, Cisco that you can buy a whole pallet for cheaper, but I don't know. The restaurant sugar.
Cisco is a retail wholesaler. We bought right from Savannah. You go to Dixie Crystal. Most places you get online, look under sugar brokers. You can buy totes of it, which you'll get, well, some of the ones we got had little square packets, you know, like for restaurants in it. Some have earplugs in them. Some have welding rods, nuts, bolts, gravel, you name it. It's non-human consumption. But if you can pick it up for 12 to 19 cents a pound, it's still cheaper than buying it, in bags at, your store.
That's right. That's right. Sounds good. Thank you, Don.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Dale. Go ahead.
Don't hear you.
I know I didn't. I hadn't raised my hand.
Oh.
Okay, your hand's up again here. Sorry.
That's my.
That leaves us with no one
No one
with
to
their hand
talk to, huh?
up. No questions?
Anthony's, what's going on down there, Anthony?
Shut this off.
You're unmuted.
Posted a couple of times in the last couple of weeks that I had my bees were dying. I was noticing dead bees on the landing board in the morning and in front of the hive, but only in 1 out of 3 boxes. And what I've had happen here, I've had it happen 4 or 5 times, and I know 3 other people here that had the same thing happen, where the hive dwindles down to 200 bees, but you still have the queen. The original queen, I know it's the queen because it was marked. And I don't know what's going on there. That is the classic definition of colony collapse disorder, that all the bees disappear. They're not dead in the box. They're not dead in front. The worker bees are gone, and the queen is there with 200 bees.
What's the university say about it?
Well, that's another, they've kind of gone dark, they've become useless. They just don't answer emails and stuff anymore. So I don't know what's going on there. And when these bees started dying a couple of weeks ago, I don't want to lose another hive. So that's why I was asking the questions to see if someone else had a different road I could go down.
Are you treating your hives?
No, because I don't have varroa mites here. And I was seeing these tiny, tiny little things. They're so small you can barely see them, and they run really fast. And I don't know what they are. And I tried catching some on some Scotch tape so I could look at them under a magnifying glass. I don't have a microscope. And I also am on the beginning of macular degeneration, so I couldn't really tell what they were. But that seems to have stopped. So maybe it was just basic pesticide poisoning, because they all did have their tongues sticking out, but I just didn't know what was going on. But
you could have somebody local that's using some type of pesticide or a powder in their garden.
Absolutely, because they do spray stuff here. And I'm surrounded by rice paddies.
Right.
And I see the guy out in the rice paddy with a gas-powered backpack on, bogging, and he might be doing herbicide, fungicide. He may not necessarily be doing pesticide. I don't know. But we do know the lady where they all buy their commercial stuff. So I've been meaning to ask the lady, when I see these guys spraying in the rice field, what are they spraying? But I haven't done that yet. But it looks like the bees have stopped dying. And right now I only have 3 hives. I'm keeping them well fed with sugar, pollen substitute, and a heavy syrup. And they seem to be doing okay.
Are you using like tea tree oil to add to the sugar water?
I just got tea tree oil last week for the first time. I just got a little bottle of it, and I'm going to start doing that.
We use that good in the springtime and in the fall. It's a antibacterial, antifungal, and I don't know if it does any good or not, but it seems that the bees seem to do a lot better. I'm not big on putting antibiotics in. The tea tree oil is a more natural thing, and it seems that, the bees just seem to be doing better. But
Yeah.
most people that's losing bees are losing them December, January, and February because, you know, they're not treating, and they say they're not seeing mites. But I think what's happening, they're claiming, I guess the university's done studies on it. The mites are sucking the fat off the bees and actually, you know, killing them that way. And if you're not treating in the fall, where the bees have enough fat to get them through the wintertime, then your populations are just plummeting on you. I don't know. I'm not that schooled on it.
Yeah, one of the professors that I know at the university, she specializes in forensics. So I have about 25 of the dead specimens here that I wanted to make arrangements to bring them to her. She told me, you know, if you got bees dying, preserve them and bring them to me and I'll see what I can do. But just hasn't answered the email, you know, so they just kind of gone dark the last couple of times.
Are you buying your bees from the same supplier all the time?
No, I've been the last 2 times I got bees, I bought from a different guy that's only about an hour away, and he actually delivers to the house, and he's been doing bees for about 40 years, and they run 400 hives. And I might be going to his yard today for the first time. He's always saying, come over, come over, come over, but I might today. Because another thing is, Miss Patricia hooked me up with Dr. Samuel Ramsey when she met him at the Eastern Bee Exposition there in Virginia a few months ago. He mentioned that he was coming to Thailand. So she told him about me, and him and I have exchanged a few emails lately, and he's been here at least once before, and now he's coming back. He's going to be here for June, July, and August, and also working with Chiang Mai University, the one near me. Going to be doing a little more work with Varroa, and also what he's on to now is these other mites, the Tropicolaelap mite. They're smaller than a Varroa mite, but they breed twice as fast. So they're more prolific than the Varroa mite and can do a lot of damage quicker. So that's going to be a big focus of his research when he's here for these 3 months. So he's asked me if, you know, if I can help him and take him to some of the bee farms here. And of course, I'll be very happy to do that. And so that's one reason I'm going to visit this other bee farm today. I'm also going to go meet a lady, and we're going to leave in about 15 minutes. I'm going to go meet this lady that has longan trees, and that's the major honey flow here in Thailand is longan. So she has trees, and she's only about 45 minutes away. So I'm going to take my bees over there and put them where her trees are. And those trees usually flower in March. So we're going to go meet her this morning, and then I'm going to try to swing by this guy that's got 400 hives. I want to see what kind of operation he's running, and let him know that I want to bring Sammy there, you know, in June, July, and August. And, you know, Sammy says he's got a grant money that, you know, he'll be buying bees and to get specimens from these people. And he said, I'll be happy to pay you for your time. I said, you don't got to pay me. I don't need money. I'll be happy just to hang around with you as much as I can while you're here. You know, that'll be very beneficial to me. So I say thanks to Pat for hooking us up for that. And so that's what I'm doing here for now.
Okay. Well, I hope he got 400 hives. He must know something, and maybe he can help you out.
Yeah, he seems to be kind of like you. He's been in it his whole life, and he seems knowledgeable. It's just I have to do everything translated through my wife, you know, because he doesn't speak English. But and then there's another place here that runs 2,000 hives, and the wholesale honey producer here I know his kid because they also sell bee supplies. So I bought things at this place for a bee and met the son. And I want to talk to the son before Sammy gets here and see what leads he can give me to give Sammy more exposure to talk to people about what they're facing here and give them more opportunity to get specimens from different places. So.
Well, good
That's
luck.
Yeah. Okay, I'll let you guys go. Thank you. I gotta
Okay.
take off myself. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Don.
Mhm.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next up is Greg. Go ahead.
Hey Don, I've been using quart jars on top to feed the bees through a hole saw cut in the top lid. It works great, but when you get to like 25, 30 hives, and you get over 5-gallon batches, it becomes almost a nightmare to keep the jars clean and keep everything flowing. I know you have plans for hive top feeders,
Right.
but what are your thoughts about using like a 1-gallon pail? And if I were to switch to something like that, could I put a T50 through the bottom of like a 1-gallon bucket?
Too big.
It's too big.
Too big.
Okay.
My son is using buckets down there. And what he's doing is he's carrying, I guess they're 1-gallon buckets. He's carrying 6 at a time. And as he goes down the road, down the rows, he knocks one bucket off and then just flips the bucket upside down. And by the time he'll run 200 to 300 buckets on 1 yard there. It's just a time thing. But you need to find the smallest bit that you got in your drill bit set. I've got what they call a master drill set. It's got letters, numbers, and decimals. I use the one like what a dentist would use. In fact, if you get a hold of a local dentist, an old drill, great, get it free. 1 hole or 2 holes in there is all you need. What you want is like a needle, like your wife's sewing machine. That's the size that what we use.
Okay.
If you're using a canning lid now, you can use a T50 stapler if you're mixing up a 2 to 1.
Yeah. Do you just set that bucket so you're piercing the bottom side of the bucket and filling from the top from
Right.
like a regular lid? You're not flipping it over. So can you literally just set that bucket right over top of that hole saw cut and your top lid if you were using jars?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You can,
then you can just weigh that bucket down so no water things
we
get in.
we used to have, in fact, I still got some. I think Ernest has seen some of the old lids that we'd done away with the jars, 12, 15 years ago. But some of the lids are still around there. And I took Coca-Cola cans, opened them up, and just stapled them across and put a little caulking around them, and they sealed them up. But we're using 1.5 inch boring bit, Forester bit. That way you can use a Powerade bottle or you can use a bucket. And the bucket, they'll seal up around it.
Okay. So there's nothing else you need, screens, just set that bucket over top of the hole and that's cool. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
It's just another way to save, a little bit of time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Virgil. Go ahead.
Yeah, Don, I don't know if you saw the post that Paul put on today where he lost so many of the bees up there in New York.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what it happened, but I think from the last chat, I think he wrapped his hives or something. I've kept bees in Ohio, and it's, I can remember when I was a kid, we had snow 3 foot deep, and it was cold. I think too much moisture in a hive does more harm. Everybody's going to have a different opinion. I learned about ventilation probably a good 20 years ago. I visited an old beekeeper in Johnson City, Tennessee, and we got talking about bees, and he asked me, "You want some fresh honey?" And I said, "Yeah, you don't need to open up a hive." He said, "You don't have to worry about it." He walked on the side of the mountain down there, and he just reached in the side of the hive. That's how big the hole was. His hive was rotting down. I said, "You need to put them things in a box. Them bees ain't going to make it." He said, "That's the strongest hive I got on the property. He's been there for years. He don't even work his hives. He just lets them keep swarming and catches the swarm." So everybody's got a different attitude on what they want. I think, enough ventilation, the bees will close it up.
Well, I just wondered, we didn't realize that we probably should have put solid bottom boards on, and everything we have has got screen bottoms. We didn't close them up, and they made it through that. We had I think the coldest wind chill we had last week was minus 35, and they're all still doing good. I mean, as soon as it warms up a little bit, they're out, but it really shocked me to see that he had that many dead bees. I mean, it just seemed hive after hive.
Multiple problems. You know, he could have had a mite problem, and then he could have just got moisture in there. I mean, there's several things without looking at them, and it's hard to tell. But that hive was really populated. There was probably 3 or 4 pounds of bees he was raking out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then he went down the row in that video, and it was just every nuke box, every big box. You could see them on the ground. They were just piled up, and I was kind of hoping he'd be here tonight to see what he had to say about it, if he thought what he thought. But I seen it looked like you had liked or commented on his, and I wondered what it was. Make sure we don't do that mistake.
There's a lot of times people post things or put a picture up. If I'm not sure, I'm kind of reluctant to make, a judgment, because, sometimes a hive could starve to death. I mean, I've seen people post pictures of frames that I would have replaced them 2 to 3 years prior to what they're showing that's a good hive. I mean, that goes back to basic things of the beehive, the principles of multiplying and storing honey. If you got bad comb, bees ain't going to work good. So it's a bonus, to replace comb and keep that stuff up. Even Daydant made that comment years ago. He said by replacing comb made big difference in hives.
So the ones that we've got that are 2 years old, probably we should start replacing that this spring, just pulling one. And
you have to look at them. I mean, sometimes as long as they're not blue-black, a brown is a normal thing. A cocoa color is a normal thing. But a lot of times what I do is look directly into the box or look into the frame. You want good hexagons. And if you see good hexagons, you're in good shape. Another thing I look at is I turn the frame sideways and I look down sideways on the rows. If I got good straight rows and they're uniform, then I'll keep the frame. But if they're zigzagging and you got big gaps and drone comb everywhere, then I replace it.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next up is John. Go ahead.
Got to get unmuted, John.
We can't hear you. I can't unmute you here.
Can you? You hear me now?
There you go.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, great. I decided not to wrap my hives this year, and I kind of thought it may be a little risky, but I actually feel that they're working out better not being wrapped, because we've had the weather here has been crazy. One day it's 60, the next day it's 30. And what I did notice on the hives that had the feeders on them, I actually started getting condensation on the screen itself. The ladder going down
on a hive top feeder?
Yeah. Now,
are you drilling 2 holes in the back?
I have 2 holes in the back that are probably 2.5 inches each.
In
I
diameter?
have a tremendous amount of ventilation. I think what happens is, though, when I put the feeder on the downside slope, the ladder, it drips down back in the box. If I would have turned that feeder around backwards, I think I'd be better off with the condensation. It would have to run the entire length of the lid.
What kind of lids are you using?
Well, I have a combination of wooden lids and metal lids. And
metal, I don't use metal for, heat purposes and condensation, but in the wintertime, or when it's cool, put a carpet tack or a upholstery tack under the corners, and that way you get more ventilation.
All right, great. Yeah, because I scraped this, we had 2 days that were about 60, and I was able to get in and clean out my bottom boards through the front entrance. And I took a lot of bees out of there. I took probably 3 or 4 coffee cans out of each hive, and I was really concerned. But then the next day, I had hundreds of thousands of bees flying out of those hives. So I don't think if you lose a lot of bees, it's not a big concern at certain times of the year. Is that
Well,
Is there a
you should,
transition?
if the weather's fluctuating and you got flying weather and you got that many dead bees, it
Mhm.
sounds like your entrance reducer is too small.
Okay.
Okay, so are you running 8s up there, or are you running the 5s?
I'm running 10s and mainly 10s, but a few 5s, and I have probably, I would say I run mouse guards on them, and I probably have them shut down to about 2.5 inches, maybe.
A 10 frame hive, I would run 3 to 4 inches.
Okay.
An 8 frame, I would run right at 3, 2.5. A
Okay.
5 frame, you want about a 1 inch. And as
Right.
far as your mouse guards, we just use take rabbit wire. It's about a 1/2 inch or a little better, I guess, than 3/8.
Okay.
I forget what it's called, rabbit wire. And we just cut it and put it on bend it over, make a 90-degree, and staple it to the front.
Okay.
Bees can pass through it. If you use too small of a wire on your entrance, drones that die in the hive, the bees can't haul them out and they start to pile up.
Well, that was a problem I had. They had dragged quite a many of them to the front, and they actually blocked their front entrance. And once I cleaned it out, they started using that front entrance again. Yeah. So the other question that I have is I have all different arrangements. I'm just trying to see what works best for me. And I usually run double deeps, but I have one particular set of hives. I have 3 mediums on that I went into winter on. They are so loaded with bees. I'm concerned about swarming. My question to you is there a certain time, will they swarm in the winter? If we get 3 days of 7-degree weather, will they take off if they're that crowded?
If you're crowded and you got a good warm day, I would go through them. I would basically, you got 3 mediums there?
Correct.
I would just smoke them lightly, take the top medium off and set it to the side and start in the second box and go through it and look for drone cells and then look for queen cells. If you don't see none in that second box, go to that first box.
All right.
Now, I made a bunch of medium nukes with a divider in there. So just in that case, we run some frames or run supers with mediums in. If I get queen cells up there, I'm going to put them in a medium.
Okay.
So, I would check it. Nothing in beekeeping is in stone. I've seen swarms this year in November, and I've seen a couple in December. Not here. I've seen the last one I've seen, I think, was around the middle of November here. But I've had people that sent me pictures of them.
All right. If I were to split them, if for some reason I opened up and I found queen cells, and if I split them, can I make them queenless? And how long will they go?
I wouldn't right now. I would look through your hive, make sure you got drones.
Okay. I actually found one drone the other day. He was being mad. I think they were throwing him out, and he was squawking about it. And he flew out of the one hive, went down about 3 hives, and they let him in down there. So
if you got 1 or 2 drones, even if you got clean cells, I don't think I would try to make a split. I would just leave that box alone personally.
Okay.
Let nature do what it's going to do, because they're not going to produce queen cells if there's no drones out there. They know more than what we do.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's the last of the questions for the night.
Everybody's going to have a long face. You got to do like the auctioneer, going once, going twice.
Yeah, it's about 20 after 9 now, so I guess we'll call it a night. And I'll leave it open afterwards for anyone who wants to hang out and chat.
That's when everybody will start talking.
Okay. Have a good night, guys.
The ones that's leaving, appreciate you showing up and hanging around. I'll stick in here a little bit because it's getting past my bedtime. I'm an old man.
Hey, Don, you just said to John